I'm just going to jump right on in and talk a little bit about this. And I'm going to start by asking just a few questions. Perhaps some of these things sound familiar. Maybe you've said some of these things. For example, when it comes to technology, I don't feel like I'm getting my money's worth. I really can't determine how the investments that I'm making in technology have resulted into the desired business outcomes and value. I'm really struggling trying to connect demand to results. For everything that needs to be done seems to take multiple meetings. What would seem to be the most simplest of things still takes way too long to get done. Things like making a change or improving a request. There's just a real lack of clarity about how we do things. One side says this, the other side says that. You know, everybody's right, but yet no one knows what's going on or what they're doing. There's some perception of communication and understanding, but yet we lack shared and agreed expectations. This one's kind of timely. Working from home is really not working as well as it should. We went through some Herculean efforts to get the lights back on so we could all work from home, but there were some gaps exposed in some of the things that we're doing, some of the processes, and things that we were able to take care of pretty quickly just by a quick trip down the hall now takes way too long to get resolved. Sometimes things change, but yet we don't know about them. We don't hear about them. We get reports from each other, but we have no idea what they tell us. Things like availability or consumption forecast, items in backlog, time to restore. Maybe work in IT is just plain chaotic. Every day's a firefight, or there's the fire drill or the surprise of the day. Lots of surprise requests. Too much us versus them. So Doug, if you could monitor the chat box for me, I want to ask a question of the group. Is any of this resonating? Does this sound familiar? What is causing friction inside your IT organization? What's causing friction between your organization and the rest of your organization outside of IT? Yeah, a lot of uncertainty. Yeah, that's a common theme. I hear that pretty frequently. It's really difficult to see what's going to happen tomorrow. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt, and certainly we're living in a world of volatility and ambiguity. So yeah, that's a big concern. Unclear expectations. It's really hard to hit the target when you don't know what you're aiming for, right? It really is. Yeah, and I appreciate that. The friction out of trying to manage spend and juggle all of this and maximize the use of current technology. That is a challenge that I'm sure many of us are going through right now. So I appreciate that feedback. That's great feedback. So a lot of you are feeling this. I'm getting some feedback through the chat box here, and a lot of you are feeling some of this. It sounds familiar to you. And when I talk about these kind of things, I like to use the analogy of a band or an orchestra. It's like, you've got a great IT organization, and if I put it in musical terms, you've got all the makings for a great band. You've got people that do well at playing their instruments, and they know the music and those kind of things. So it's not that they don't know how to play. That's not the issue at all. But what they need to understand is, where do they fit? How do they work with each other? How does the technology fit? What is the sheet of music that we're all going from? And here's the thing. You very well may have parts of the solution already within your organization. It's called ITSM. And ITSM, well, exceptional ITSM, I feel like is more important now than ever. And it's even critical for even thriving here in this digital age. But with many organizations, it broke down somewhere. ITSM never made it from a tactical solution to a strategic enabler. So why didn't it work? Well, first of all, for those of you that are maybe not familiar with what ITSM is, let me recap. ITSM, or IT Service Management, is an organizational capability for providing and creating business value through the use of technology. And one of the things I want to call out here is I use the term organizational capability. For service management to be successful, it has to be an organizational capability. It can't be just one part of the organization that follows service management practices. The whole organization has to be involved. In fact, service management is found in other places within the organization, like customer service or maybe in facilities. They're also practicing service management. So if I bring it back to ITSM for a second, perhaps some of you have heard some horror stories about ITSM. Perhaps some of you have some horror stories you could tell, and I'd love to hear those. But as I look at service management over the last few years, there's been a couple of three trends that I feel like that have kind of emerged for why it didn't work before. And here's a couple of things I'd ask you to consider. First of all, many times folks that were on the service management journey were way too focused on the implementation of a tool or some kind of software, only to find that when they actually turned the thing on, it didn't really fit the needs of the organization very well. There were some gaps. Things didn't quite work as we expected. Or we treated service management as a one and done kind of thing. There was no continual improvement. There was no revisiting of constructs and concepts and ways that we were doing things. But the interesting thing is that I haven't encountered an organization yet, a business yet, that is one and done. Every business is going through constant evolution and constant change. And it only stands to reason that service management should go through the same kind of evolution and change. But in many cases, it never happened. Sometimes I find that ITSM was treated as an IT project and not a business initiative. But yet, IT is involved with every part of every organization. Maybe a few years ago, I might have been able to argue that there were parts of the organization that didn't maybe have a reliance or some interaction with technology. But I think in this digital age, I'd be hard pressed to find a department or a team within an organization that didn't have some interdependence or reliability on the use of technology. But perhaps the most prevalent reason that I find that service management didn't quite work, is right there. We focused only on IT operations, or we focused only on a service desk and left out, or in some cases, ran over the rest of the IT organization. It's like that we were expecting to play some great musical piece, play a complete symphony, but only have part of the orchestra involved. But we need all parts of the IT organization working in harmony to deliver the exceptional results that can come from good service management. Or maybe even worse, everybody is playing, but we're not on the same sheet of music. And rather than sounding like a nice symphony, it's cacophony. It's more like noise. So If this sounds familiar, if this resonates, I want to let you know, hey, I get it. A few years ago, I was in this very same hole, but I learned something, and here's what I've learned. Service management is really about how your business leverages technology to co-create value and deliver business outcomes. And IT, while important, is only part of service management. If it weren't for the business, we wouldn't exist. IT wouldn't have a reason to exist. If it weren't for those business functions, what would we be doing? If it weren't for other parts of the IT organization, we couldn't stand alone by ourselves anyway. So one of the things that I learned is that exceptional service management is about your business, not about IT. And for some folks, that's a little eye-opening. So let me explain. When I think about exceptional service management, I have to think about it in terms of the entire IT organization. Operations can't do its job without development. Info security and quality have to be involved. It's the entire parts of it's the whole parts of the IT organization. But it's not just the people, it's also how the technology and the practices and all of those things that are involved throughout the organization. So the folks from marketing, the folks from sales and research and development and finance and so on. How all of those people, including IT, develop and deliver the products and services from the point of origin, down at the bottom of the slide, to the point of consumption, up at the top of the slide. And whether that involves on-premise or in the cloud or through systems of engagement, systems of record, whatever it takes to get data and information from the point of origin out to the consumption by the customer. It's about delivering outcomes, not outputs. Now, I'm often asked, what's the difference between outputs and outcomes? It doesn't make sense to me. And the analogy that I like to use is pizza delivery. You order a pizza from your favorite pizza delivery place, and the output is a pizza. But what about the outcomes? Well, outcomes are things like the pizza arrived on time. The pizza was hot. It wasn't cold, it was hot. The pizza was tasty, not a piece of cardboard, right? The pizza I ate and it didn't make me sick. Those are all examples of outcomes. So most of all, not only is exceptional ITSM about delivering those outcomes, it is also about co-creating value and delivering value from end to end. That's what exceptional service management is about. So why do you need service management now more than ever? Well, here's a few reasons that I would ask you to consider. First, as we've already kind of talked about, the line between business functions and technology is indistinguishable. There's no part of any business that doesn't have some reliance or interaction with technology. And we have to have a solid foundation. We have to eliminate some of that uncertainty that sometimes that we face in our use of technology. We have to be able to rely on it. We have to be able to trust that that technology is going to do what we think it's supposed to do. The second reason is consumer impatience. Quite frankly, customers have no tolerance for poorly performing or malfunctioning technology. They'll just move on to the next website, right? I know I do. I don't like watching the little spinning circle when I try to visit a shopping place or something like that online. We have to have a balance between agility and reliability. Yeah, you have to have both. One of the reasons that many organizations struggle with this is they don't know where they are today. They don't understand services and processes and procedures and how that interacts with the rest of the organization, how that delivers that value and outcome that the business is counting on. And this has a cascade effect on reliability. On the flip side, we can't be so concerned with just locking down every aspect of technology so that no one can do anything. And we surround it with such bureaucracy that we can't make progress. So we need to have that balance between agility and reliability. You know, it's not just about delivering outputs or business value. The experience is critical. You know, in fact, I wrote a blog about this several months ago that said, you know, move over business value. You know, it's now make room for experience. And one of the things that I meant by that is that, you know, business value continues to be very important, but business value is one of those things that is just one aspect of the experience. It's also about the customer experience. You know, we're all familiar with the customer experience. How does the customer feel as they interact with our organization? You know, does technology make that journey through interaction with our organizations frictionless? And that's very important. Especially in this day and age of social media, customers can really make their displeasure with an organization widely known very quickly. But it's not just customer experience that makes the difference. It's also this employee experience. Employee experience may be something that you've not thought about before, but it's very similar to customer experience, but it looks at it from the employee perspective. How does the employee feel as they interact with the organization? Do they like their jobs? Do they like their managers? Do they feel like that their contributions are valued? Do they feel like that they have enough autonomy so that they can make an impact or make a difference, that their work has meaning? So value is just one part of the equation. The experience is just as important as the value that we're co-creating. Talked about this a little bit earlier. You know, service management is now more important than ever as we try to meet the demands and expectations of the new normal. You know, funny thing happened a few months ago. We all went home. While the event itself is not funny, the result that we're in today is this working from home thing is, you know, starting to wear off. The novelty of this is starting to wear off. And there's an expectation, you know, even though businesses and customers have become distanced, you know, we've become distanced as we work with each other. You know, I'm working from my living room right now. I'm sure many of you are joining from your homes. And as we've become distanced, the expectations of doing our work haven't changed. And now there's an expectation that work is going to happen no differently than what it did a few months ago. You know, we went through some Herculean efforts to turn the lights back on and get our businesses back in business. And initially, maybe our consumers were a little tolerant if things didn't quite work as they should, but we're now 16 or so weeks in, and businesses is trying to move on, and there's this expectation that things work just as well, if not better, than what we had before. That's why another reason why service management is now more important now than ever. And then lastly, there's not a week that goes by that we don't hear about some data breach or some information threat or theft. Poor technology practices make headlines, and I don't know about you, but I don't want to make headlines for that reason. But here's the thing. If service management is going to be exceptional, then there's a few things that we've got to do. First, we have to align demand to value. You know, just implementing technology for technology's sake is a waste. The use of technology must provide value for both the consumer, the customer, the business, and us here inside of IT. Right? I'm just like everybody else. I like to get the latest and greatest technical gadget, and there's a lot of appeal for the bright, shiny object syndrome. You know, I get that. I fall into that all the time. But we just can't use technology just because it's cool. It really has to deliver some measurable outcome. It really has to have some kind of value, not only for the customer and the business, but also for us from an IT perspective. Are we good at, do we have the competence? Are we good at delivering that and supporting that technology? So very important. We have to take a holistic approach. We can't just focus on one part of the organization or one aspect of the organization. We have to look at how we deliver products and services, and we have to look at that at a holistic perspective. We can't just look at it from an IT perspective. We also have to look at it from a business perspective. It's not just about turning on features and functionality quickly. It's not just about troubleshooting or answering a call at the service desk, finding those root causes. We have to look at the whole thing holistically. We must look at it from consumer demand through the various value streams within the organization, how technology plays in those value streams, and how we deliver those outcomes and values back to the customer making the demand. This means that we have to manage IT as a portfolio, just like all the other parts of the organization. You know, maybe in many organizations, IT is set up as kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet. Just call IT, they'll take care of it. Doesn't matter, just ask IT, they'll fit it in, they'll get the things done. But here's the thing, you know, I've not found an IT organization yet that was set up or funded to be an all-you-can-eat buffet. One of the things that we have to consider for service management to be exceptional is that we have to look and manage and track the cost of ongoing operations, maintenance, the resource commitments, training, all of the things that we need to do not only within IT, but across the organization so that we can understand and make good data-driven decisions about investments in technology. We have to manage IT like a portfolio. We have to deliver that differentiated experience. You know, I talked about that a little bit earlier with my discussion around customer experience and employee experience. Exceptional ITSM will deliver that customer delight that we're looking for because we're setting and meeting those shared expectations, because we've brought clarity into how it is that, and what it is that we're doing, and the results that not only our business should expect, but also the customers of the business should expect. And lastly, we have to be able to use the right instruments in the right way, you know, kind of continuing with my music analogy. We have to move from a group of exceptional individual musicians, very skilled, very talented at playing their particular instruments. We have to move into a band. We maybe even move up to an orchestra. So exceptional service management means that we're using the right combinations of methodologies and approaches that are right for your organization. Yes, this means that we're going to use some agile approaches, or we're going to incorporate DevOps and some ITIL kinds of things. Maybe we need to take ISO 27001, the IT security management standard, into account. All of these things can and should play together. But exceptional service management means that we don't take a one-size-fits-all, a one methodology approach to doing service management. We want a seamless approach for melding these right methodologies to meet our business and market demand. You know, if you think about it, I always use the analogy of a carpenter. If I engaged a carpenter to come to my house to remodel my kitchen, for example, you know, I want to replace the cabinets, I want to do new flooring, I want to put new countertops, and the carpenter only showed up with a hammer, wouldn't you be a little concerned? I know I would. So for service management to be exceptional, we don't want to take this one size fits all, and that's we want to take advantage of the strengths of the various methodologies that are out there and make them work for us in the right way. Just like a good orchestra takes advantage of the strengths of the various instruments playing within the orchestra. So it's the right approach to service management that helps you be a rock star. So I want to pause here before I wrap up and just answer any questions that you may have. Doug will monitor the chat box for me. And if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Please, everyone, ask questions. You know, as we're Thinking about service management, Doug has really changed my thinking a lot on what IT service management means. I think for a lot of professionals, it really means a set of tooling that lets you monitor how well you're serving your clients. But I love the culture of serving employees or putting employees equal with or slightly ahead of customers so that they can do the best job possible. You know, we've been fighting alignment for ever since we put the first mainframe in companies back in the 60s, and it's it's still an issue. And I think IT service management is one of the few overarching strategies that can really help us keep that alignment in a long-term fashion. Doug does consulting on this on a regular basis. He left a corporate job to do that sort of work, and he's been bringing value to his clients for many years. So if this is interesting to you, I would encourage you to reach out to Doug at Tedder Consulting. We are recording this webinar, by the way, and you will see a note on the follow-up email on how to get the recording. Looks like we have a question, Doug. Do you think adoption of IDLE, for example, was problematic because it was too heavy on bureaucracy and process for process sake? Or was it simply implemented incorrectly?
The honest answer, it was implemented incorrectly. No one, and I've been around since IDLE version 2, right? And ITIL is certainly one of the more prominent service management methodologies. But ITIL, just like every other methodology, has kind of evolved over the years. I think, but what I find is that, people implement these things in a way with every best intention. But perhaps maybe the landscape has changed. I know when I first got involved, it was all about protecting infrastructure. That was 20 some years ago. Now it's about how do we best serve the customer? How do we best serve the business? And I think many organizations kind of lost sight of that and became a little bit rigid. So it's an interpretation kind of thing. And I would lean toward, maybe our business reasons for leveraging a framework like ITIL have changed over time. So that's how I've been answering. I hope that helps.
I think it does. I was party to implementing a help desk management tool, and we got the cart before the horse, and it cost us a lot of time and heartache to back off of all that because we weren't considering the end users and our outcomes. We were considering the project as implementing a software tool instead.
Yep, and that's that's a very common approach that many organizations have taken. But I get it. I understand. We're all under pressure to kind of deliver some kind of result, but and you have to look at it. You have to look at it holistically and look at it in the long play. How does this best serve the outcomes, the needs of not only the IT organization and the business, but also the end customer? And that's where exceptional service management can really make that difference.
Great point. Doug, how can they contact you?
Well, just really quickly, it just helps you do more. I've got right here on the slide, I got a couple of things I want to take away. I'm going to skip this slide in the interest of time.
Okay.
But I wanted to leave everybody with 3 takeaways. So whether you're a service management deep into the weeds with service management or just to it, I've got 3 things that you can do to become a service management rock star. First, map your technology use to business outcomes. How does information and value flow through your organization? And what is the role that technology plays in that flow of information? That really helps you understand how the technology delivers those outcomes. Secondly, start reporting your performance in business terms. Quite frankly, no one outside of IT cares how many calls came into the service desk. And availability doesn't really mean much when I can't get into my system today. So think about what it is that you're doing from a technology perspective in the outcomes and results that the business is getting. And then last but not least, check for value leakage. Now, value leakage might be a new term to some of you. It happens when there's some misalignment between what we're expected to do and what we are actually doing. And there's lots of reasons for value leakage. But I've talked to many organizations over the last few weeks since the advent of the pandemic, and they found some value leakage, things that didn't quite meet the expectations and aren't working as well now in this new normal. So these are three things that you can do to become a real service management rock star. And so, Doug, now to answer your question, first of all, I really appreciate your time, Doug. Thanks for having me on. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I would welcome that. There's my contact information. So send me an email, or you can follow me on Twitter, or even if you'd like to chat, put some time on my calendar. I would welcome that conversation. So thank you again, and appreciate your time. And I'm going to